Good morning, everybody. And after that rather interesting period of banter, I thought I'd settle in and pick up the role of chair, talking to and encouraging everybody to participate in this very first webinar of the year for Espria and its Optimize IT series. In quarter one, Espria is taking the idea and the theme of peace of mind when it comes to IT provisioning. As we all know, technology is there to help and support. It should be a benefit and not a pain. And that includes networking, it includes connectivity, it includes security. And that's designed to help business owners and enterprise and organization CEOs and the like to focus on their business and operation rather than their systems and applications. They just need technology infrastructure that just makes stuff work. They just need technology infrastructure that just makes stuff work. Now, we're joined today by four fantastic panelists, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves individually. And then I have already got some questions, which I'm going to throw into the mix and ask our panelists to contribute an answer to, so that we can have a proper debate on some of these big issues. I would encourage anybody who is on here to please ask questions, raise hands, ask questions in the chat, whatever may be. And if we're not answering a question that is key for you, let us know and we will throw it straight into the mix. So without further ado, you don't need to hear me talking all morning. I'm going to ask Rob Smith from Xerox to introduce himself. And then we can hand on to Simon, then John, then Brian.
Okay, good morning. So thank you for the invite to the event. So my name's Rob. I work for Xerox. I'm part of the channel team across EMEA, Europe, Middle East and Africa. And my role is to support our partners and their end users to understand the Xerox wider portfolio and how our technology can really go beyond just talking about printing and scanning and really help with some of the core productivity and security issues and data management.
Brilliant. Simon.
Hi all, Simon Thomas. I work for Ikonic Technologies Limited. We are one of 3 BSI certified refurbishers on the planet and the only one that's BSI certified for PCs. What does it mean? Ultimately, I look after the quality assurance and sustainability elements, making sure that all scientific fact is proven. And we're just very good at what we do.
Thank you, Simon. John.
Thank you. Yeah, so my name is Jon Hope. I'm Senior Technology Evangelist for Sophos across Northern Europe. I've been at Sophos since 2011, so I've spent a long time in the world of cybersecurity. And as a technology evangelist, it's my primary role to talk to our channel partners, talk to our customers and prospects about all the products and services we do here at Sophos, and really explaining where the value lies and why it's a good fit for most organisations.
Thank you. Finally, Brian.
Hi, yeah, I'm Brian Sibley. I'm a solutions architect at Espria. So basically that involves talking to our clients and prospects to understand their business problems and then working with our partners like these fine gentlemen on the panel this morning and to architect solutions to address those requirements in an efficient way. And my primary focus really is around cloud and security solutions associated with those. Brilliant.
Thank you, Brian. And actually, I'm going to start the first question with you, if I may.
Sure.
And this is a broad issue, but I think it's one that I'd like to pull out, and I'd like the other panelists to sort of contribute once Brian's given us a response to this. And the first question is this: how can we ensure that a company or an organisation or an enterprise's infrastructure is secure?
Yeah, it's a big, broad subject, that one.
Oh, yeah.
But, I think, yeah, starting from the top, really, it's all about layers. You're layering your security down, and that's as much about people and process as it is about technology, to be honest. Obviously, we're a technology company, but it's very much, you've got to involve the people and have the processes in place. So at a very high level, you're really looking at things like zero trust principles. So you're making sure you're validating who people are, what devices they're on, where they're connecting from, and things like that. And obviously ties in with then things like using multi-factor authentication to prove who people are. So before you allow any access to any resource, you need to make sure that this really is the person you think it is, and they are coming from a secure location, etc. And I think probably the key thing, which I think everyone else here will agree with, is security is not something you set and forget. It's something you've got to be constantly reassessing. It's a constantly changing landscape, and we're going to be constantly reassessing that. You don't just go, yep, I've installed X, I can now sit back and relax, security's ticked. It's not the case, unfortunately. And I think with all that sort of stuff in the background, the sort of reassuring your customers element is then certification side of things. So things like getting Cyber Essentials certifications, which will validate that those processes and those technologies are actually doing what you need them to. So I think that's very, very broad level.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to drill down a bit, actually, if I may, and I'm going to bring in Jon from Sophos, because this is absolutely pertinent to you. This last couple of months, we've seen a huge ransomware attack on the British Library. That's a classic example of a breach of cybersecurity. They're just getting themselves sorted out now. But my question is this, is what are the very latest developments in cybersecurity that your customers and end users in particular can be reassured that we're addressing?
Okay, good, really good question. So one of the things about cybersecurity, and Brian actually touched on this, is that it's constantly changing, it's constantly evolving, and it isn't something that you can ever hope to set and forget. You know, it's not a case of going out and buying a product that's me sorted, because you've got to constantly adapt even the settings and that sort of thing. But increasingly what we're finding is that cybersecurity and cyber challenges, both sides of the fence have a human element associated with them. So we live in a world where there's increasing automation, and there's lots of places where automation transcends our lives, but actually the cyber criminals are going the opposite way. So when we talk about innovations on how cyber criminals are executing their attacks, often now it's a human operative at the other end that's actually, manually, like the movies, sitting there, hands on keyboard, attacking organizations. And this presents a really big problem for cybersecurity, because humans are blessed with the ability to adapt, try different approaches, change what they're doing, and problem solve really effectively. And how that's influenced the world of cybersecurity is that it is now no longer really just about buying products. So a few years ago, I'd have sat in front of you and said, well, if you buy some Sophos endpoint and a Sophos firewall and that's what you need to do. But now, even as a vendor which is still very much committed to creating technology solutions, we ourselves accept that is only a part of the solution. Yeah. So we are increasingly promoting the adoption of managed detection and response services. And if I can explain what that is in a bit more detail, that's the latest innovation that we're bringing to market, which is all around not just having technology in place, but then also buying in the services to constantly monitor and check the estate. Because with the best will in the world, the cyber criminals are now so sophisticated that they will often find ways to circumvent technology, and technology on its own isn't enough to keep on top of these challenges. So having those eyes on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, talking about peace of mind, giving you the reassurance that your network is being monitored, it's being protected, it's being covered, is really that latest innovation. And we feel that this is, we're not on our own in feeling this, actually. Gartner, for example, will tell you that 50% of organizations by 2025 will have some kind of service of this ilk. We feel that this is very much the future of cybersecurity, is that there's a technology element, but there's also a human monitoring element, and that's really the only way to keep on top of these latest attacks.
Thanks, Jon. And actually, Rob, can I bring you in at this point? Can I ask you a broader question on here? And this is, I guess, aimed at the broader business issue. What do you see as the cost of a data breach? What areas should businesses be concerned about?
So in terms of cost, we don't actually have numbers as such from a printing point of view. What we are seeing is a change in the tactics, and very interesting that Jonathan used the words about humans and their ability to adapt. That for the most part, people don't tend to think about their print infrastructure as a potential threat. It's more email or other systems. However, there was actually a breach for one of the software vendors last year, where the hackers realized that from their reporting modules, there were certain ports and protocols that were wide open. And so that was their way into the company organization. What we're finding now is that actually more so the SMB market than the enterprise market is being targeted, because those smaller businesses tend to think, well, we're not as valuable, we're not as large as the enterprise. We don't need to worry as much. There's a bigger fish out there that they're going to go after. As a result of that, they've adapted, they've realised there's an easier target here. And so they're going after those smaller ones. And we're seeing ransomwares where they're doing their homework, they're learning and understanding the value of the organisation, and they can work out to say, well, roughly how much is your turnover per day? Do you want to be locked down for 3 or 4 days and lose that revenue? Or do you want to pay us 5,000 and we'll be on our way? Wow. So not so much a typical cost, but we're seeing the tactic is they're going after SMBs and they're understanding the revenue to then find them a value that it's easier to pay it than it is the headache of losing 3 or 4 days of revenue.
And that, I mean, that is absolutely extraordinary. And as an SMB owner myself, that is certainly worth me hearing and taking on board. So I'll be talking to my Espria account manager later on today. So I'm going to bring in Simon at this point because I want to sort of get an understanding from his perspective about the impact of ESG and sustainability and the challenges there in terms of compliance within the modern organisation today.
Certainly, from the environmental social governance perspective, all organisations now are looking towards the minimum standards of expectation. So you have to be seen in this day and age to be providing the right type of service ethically and sustainably. It has to be evidenced or documented at least to adhere to, let's take local government as an example, to adhere to their minimum standards of expectation. By 2025, all local government associations, LGAs, have to evidence the fact that they are purchasing at least 20% of their technology from a sustainable and ethical supply source. Now, how does that become an evidential sort of process? That's through a framework called the Pt1 0621, whereby that is point A to point Z, showing clearly defining the best practice of logistical supply chain. So the product coming into the circularity ring of things, the process of logistics, so what vehicle Dave is driving to bring the product to the facilities, whether that's a hybrid vehicle, the process of the device being refurbished and remanufactured in some cases, to the on-point or end-point delivery. This is stuff that is now becoming really forefrontal in our industry, not just from a refurbished perspective, but also from a new perspective. From a security element, what we tend to look at is sort of two areas, and that is the data destruction of the information that is on said drives, etc., or device. And we are Blanco certified for that data destruction to be able to certify and verify that that has been data wiped to military standard, through to the ADISA accreditation, which is destruction of said device or drive. So we can certify that the product has been ethically, securely, and responsibly destroyed. So from a GDPR perspective, all boxes are ticked. From a sustainability perspective, all boxes are ticked. And then from an environmental perspective, all boxes are ticked. In some instances, from the social element, we will look to Blanco those devices. If they are not viable for full refurbish and provision, we will look to donate them to localized charities, schools, colleges for further use. And that's really the social governance. We're trying to be more thought leader based around what we do, even down to the type of packaging that we're looking to use, so that it's fully recyclable. The packaging will be impregnated with seed-based solution, so the cardboard can be torn up by the school and planted by the pupils. If it's a local business, they can have their logo detail printed onto the boxes and donate those boxes to the school for the school to then tear apart. So that's their ESG messaging put into place. So there's a whole plethora of things, to be honest with you, Richard, on this.
I mean, you've raised a really good point there, and you raised that 4-letter acronym that I think most people in this world have dreaded for the last 5 or 6 years, which is GDPR. And there are a whole host of others in there. There's PSD2, there's MiFID, there's CBEST, there's StarFS, and many, many more. This is the issue of compliance. Yeah. And what I'd like to try and noodle out from you now, if I may, and from the other speakers as well, is, how can IT support adherence and compliance to those extremely complicated compliance standards?
I think Jonathan, excuse me, I have a bit of a chesty throat. I think Jonathan hit upon the point, it might have been Brian. It's about the certification. Everybody with the greatest will on the planet wants to do the right thing. And you can be perceived as doing the right thing, but actually it can be elongated in a way that it shouldn't be, or it's unnecessary. As long as you're adhering to the standard compliance and you are certified, then you have a process that you stick to. I would say, certainly with regards to our typical type of industry, for second user device, the most important thing is to be able to evidence what you say you do. So compliance for us is a massive tick box in order to reassure and provide that sort of galvanization to the end customer that there is no potential data breach, there is no potential unethical access to their networks through our process, and that is certified by our compliance to whatever regulation that may be that we are looking to put into place for that particular opportunity.
And delivering peace of mind in the process
100%
in turn. Right, good.
It's quite a refreshing attitude to compliance. That is, I can hear loud and clear that you consider being compliant to these standards to be a differentiator in the marketplace, and it's a positive thing for your organisation. Yes, and sometimes I think people think of compliance as the big stick that everybody gets with, but actually, do you know what? If you do compliance well and shout about it, it's a good differentiator.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'll bring Rob and I'll bring Brian in on that one. And is that a point you both agree with as well, about differentiation in the marketplace through compliance?
Yes, absolutely. So in that wider ESG conversation, we've actually developed, rather than focusing on individual products, so talking about the hardware, the software, the services, we've actually focused more on combining them all together of how can we provide, and then created offerings around someone mentioned zero trust earlier on. So we have a full zero trust methodology and value proposition for the devices, for the users, for the documents, and then similar on productivity, similar on sustainability. And the point was made earlier from a sustainability point of view. Well, again, going back to security with SMB, I'm only small, it's not as important, but sustainable and ethical, the way that you operate. If you wish to trade with Xerox and you want to provide us services and components, you will be scrutinized to see how sustainable you are and how ethical you are. So for smaller organizations, it's about their supply chain and their customer base, that they've got to be able to report this. From an environmental point of view, we're aware now that in Brussels and Belgium, in addition to their financial records, businesses there now have to provide their ESG scorecard. They've got to report to the government the impact that they've had in terms of power usage. How are they going to do that across their users and their document usage? What technology do they need to provide it? So we're now using our tools, that if we use our fleet tools on our hardware, we can provide that as a report for you, or a sustainability, security report, productivity report. It's all about having those tools. And Brian made the point at the start about the layers and the processes in place, that rather than focusing on the technology and what it can do, it's more about the outcomes and resolving those challenges.
Yeah. Fantastic. That was a really detailed response to that question. I'm going to throw a question now over at Brian, and this is about scalability. Now, many organizations, myself included, are growing. And that whole issue of scalability, we want to know that we've got an IT solution that will be with us. So my question to you is, how can you all, as suppliers to end users in the market, how can you ensure that your systems scale with your customers?
Yes, it's an interesting scenario, and I think it's something that a lot of more traditional businesses are struggling with, to be honest. So obviously, as I said at the start, I hold my hand up, cloud is where I tend to focus, and that's obviously where my answer is going to go. But the traditional infrastructure that people had, they had a collection of servers in a server room on their site in an office, and that was fine until something happened. You've got more users being employed, you took over another business, something like that, and all of a sudden we need just a little bit more capacity than those current servers can work with. So all of a sudden you go from, oh, it's just another user license, to, oh, we need to be a bigger boat situation. It's that Jaws phrase, isn't it? We're going to need a bigger server. And all of a sudden there's that big investment that you weren't banking on. And that, I think, is the big benefit of going to a true cloud offering. The whole cloud model is designed to be scalable. Whether you're 20 users or 20,000 users, they can fit. So it becomes a much simpler model for a business to work with, that you know the cost per user. So as you take on more users, there's a cost there. You're going to need to get an end device for them. You're going to need the endpoint software. You're going to need the application. They're all fixed elements there that you can go in and say, yep, that's what I need. And there's no big nasty shocks when you just tip over that the size of the server you currently have situation. So definitely, I think cloud really eases that challenge.
And the other panelists in agreement, I assume, I think, on this issue?
Yeah, I don't disagree with Brian's sentiment there. Scalability comes at a cost. So you've got to have some sort of rationale about your exposure to risk from a financial endpoints as well. For our sort of situation, we tend to see a lot of organizations, both public and private, looking towards cost-saving exercises whilst trying to expand their further operations. And sometimes newer product at a costly expense isn't exactly the solution for them to particularly go for. So where we sit with our product being a second user device, but of the highest quality product, it gives them a hybrid solution whereby they can either invest wholeheartedly in a full sustainable base device solution at a fraction of the cost of new, or they have power users that can use the functionality of a new device, but other users have the benefit of the sustainable base solution at a fraction of the cost. It helps with their bottom line, their top line, if you want, and it also mitigates a lot of the risk of that scale and expansion going forward.
Okay, I've had a question in from a certain Greta Thunberg. She's asking, given climate change, should we be considering a move to the cloud? And I'm assuming by the basis of her question, she means the power being pumped into data centers. Do you have a thought on that, Jens?
I think I'd still definitely say that is the way to go. Once again, the cloud infrastructure is designed to scale. And with that, it means that rather than that traditional model I was talking about a minute ago, where you have a server running an application in a cupboard in your office, that's probably running at 20% capacity, and it's just sat there 24/7, 365, using power. It's pushing out heat into the office that you need to get rid of. The data centers are designed to run multiple users, multiple environments across those systems, so they're being run very efficiently. And if you look at the likes of Microsoft, they're very heavily investing in sustainable power and renewables. So they are using power from wind power, solar power, things like that to actually power the data centers. And there's even talk now where they are using the batteries within the data centers to feed back into the grid. So on the days where wind power is maybe not very good, there's not very much wind, the Microsoft data centers can actually start pushing their power back out that's stored in their backup batteries back out into the grid, which means that you don't start having to use fossil fuel power stations. So I think there's a lot of good messages there around the data centers, even though the initial shock, you look at it and say, wow, look at all that power being consumed by a data center. It's far more efficient than a number of individual businesses running their own servers.
I've got a question here for John. Are you seeing an increase in threats to organizations as a result of the ongoing conflicts we're facing globally in the Ukraine and in the Middle East?
Very good question, and the answer it does very much depend on which type of organisation you are. It is really important to emphasise that by far and away the vast majority of attacks that we observe are financially motivated. And candidly speaking, as unfortunate as the events are in the Ukraine and the Middle East, those things are not really having a massive impact on cyber criminal activities. Maybe with one notable exception, actually, if you've got a second, we learned a huge amount about how cyber criminal gangs actually operate and function just a couple of years ago at the start of the Ukrainian conflict, and this was all caused by a particular cybercrime gang that essentially very early on in the conflict came out to say that, you know, we may well be a Russian cybercrime gang, but we're also Russian citizens and we believe in what Russia is doing and we'll support their activities using cyber means. And somewhat interestingly, a lot of the affiliates actually operating in that gang were Ukrainians, and obviously this led to a huge amount of disagreement inside said ransomware gang. And what happened is a huge amount of data spilled out about the organizational structure of a cybercrime gang and you know, how they operate and the business model behind it, which is an absolutely fascinating read. You'll find a lot more in the State of Ransomware report that we publish, but essentially it was a real expose into that particular cybercrime gang and how they operate and do their business. But that is maybe one sort of side impact. In terms of day-to-day operations, that cybercrime gang basically split in half, and the two halves have continued to basically be a nuisance and a generation of cash for criminal gangs. However, there is always these outlying attacks that are politically motivated. And that can either be disaffected individuals that want to make a political point. Coming back to Ukrainian conflict, we did see a cyber gang actually operating in Belarus called Cyber Partisans, and they were a really interesting outfit because they attacked their own railway network, which might seem counterintuitive, but the reason they did that is they took great objection to the fact that Belarus was essentially supporting Russia by allowing them to use their railway network to move tanks, military equipment, personnel across their territory. So they came out on Twitter and said, look, if you've allowed these trains to flow, then we will take the railway network down. And that, lo and behold, that is exactly what they did. So there's a slightly interesting example of a politically motivated attack going on.
That's extraordinary.
Again, which you can read about. Yeah, we've seen attacks against US satellite firms that are providing comms in those regions, which is obviously a play to disrupt military and probably civilian communications as well in those areas. But I mean, key emphasis really is for most cybercrime gangs, because they're not interested in who the victim is, they're just interested in cashing out. It's essentially business as usual. But it does mean that we should be on our guard, and that increasingly applies to anybody who's got the kind of business that somebody might take exception to, whether it be manufacturing of arms or, that's an extreme example. Obviously, at a state level, I'm sure people will be looking at this and thinking, well, how do we shore up our infrastructure and that kind of thing as well? Because, we will increasingly see the Belarusian example is probably the first time that we've seen a measurable impact on a military campaign through cyber means. And that's the start of the presumably a new generation of warfare.
That's absolutely extraordinary. Rob, I'm going to bring you in at this point because I'm going to ask one final question of you all, and I'm going to start with your good self. And that is, and this is, again, it plays back to peace of mind. And there'll be a number of SMBs on this call, people like myself who run their own businesses, and are just simply looking for a solution that will simplify the management of all their IT systems and business processes. And the question is for you, how can businesses do that?
Again, with all of these, it's multi-layered, depends where we're looking at. So simplifying access from my point of view, print and related services, simplifying the process for users now. How can we use the technology that, certainly with larger customers that have their own internal IT team, does the user ring their IT, who then rings the supplier to gain an engineer? Or can we use the technology and use an app on the device, hit the button, request an engineer? Or hit another button and there's a video that shows you, here's how you can replace the components on the device. Proactive device management. So we can provide you with the tools, and as an end user with limited experience on how to manage them, you can try to manage the device yourself if you wish, or we can do it for you. So Espria very much looking at that remote management service delivery. So in terms of managing the devices, but not just in terms of the obvious around the settings, but things like passwords. We all have in our businesses password policies for our desktop devices, but what's the policy for the MFD? And yet that MFD has many different ports that can access. We can scan to Google, we can scan to OneDrive. There's direct access there. Who's managing those? Brian made the point of security moving forward. So what about firmware updates that then have the security patches? What about managing the trends and the environment changes? So how do we know the usage? So we're seeing, you talked about scale earlier on, you made the comment about seeing growth. We're seeing the opposite in our business. Because of hybrid workings, businesses are getting smaller. So we're scaling down. There's less devices out there. There's less print volumes. There's less print servers. So can we have technology that isn't dependent on being able to work in a server environment? Can we use it in the cloud? Having that usage trend reporting, we've seen a decline in print, but conversely, a massive increase in scanning because there's a lot more digital activity. So how do we simplify all of this? Well, our approach is through our partners, we will do all of this for you. So we will give the users the tools to give them a direct access to the service teams when they need them. We will have the monitoring tools to monitor the devices, users, the activity. We've got the reporting that tells us how the environment is changing over time. And we can do all of this without having to install it in the customer environment.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Brian, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I agree with what Rob's saying, to be honest. It's having that that one point of contact, whether that be a person, whether that be a system. It's removing duplication. Certainly in the security world, you find some people like to go for the best of breed and all these little point solutions, and they have something for this, something for that, something else. And they say, well, I've got best of breed for everything, but I still got hit. And the problem is, because you've got all these different consoles, different systems, things fall down the cracks in between. So you can't monitor it all. So it's better to simple on a single solution, or use something like a SIEM solution, which pulls together all the data from all the solutions you have, so that you have one screen to monitor. Basically, it's removing that complexity, makes everyone's life easier.
You took that straight out of the Sophos manifesto, I think. There, yeah, we're really big on that. We operate in a world where we have both endpoints, firewalls, wireless access points, mobile management, public cloud. You name it, and we do it for security. And one of the key things we talk about as a value proposition to clients is, it's that consolidation of having everything manageable in one place. It's a lot easier to configure across multiple things if you've got it all in the same spot. And that really brings a big benefit to customers. And again, looking at the one place to call as well, the managed detection and response side of things, giving people that peace of mind that that estate is then subsequently being monitored, and we will potentially be fixing things on your behalf while you're away at evenings, weekends, bank holidays, that kind of thing. Again, is bringing that peace of mind and getting the best out of the technology stack. As much as we can take telemetry from lots of other vendors, and that's fine if you've got a mixed infrastructure, it is so much more efficient to have it from a single vendor, and it unlocks extra security capabilities and interoperability that you just can't get by mixing and matching different vendors.
Thank you. Have we any questions from the audience at this stage? Otherwise, I'm going to ask our panelists to wrap up on the concept of peace of mind. I think we're good, gents. So in summary, Jonathan, please give us your thoughts on delivering peace of mind for the enterprise.
Okay, I would definitely, I'm going to come back to that conversation about having your infrastructure monitored. I think that's absolutely key these days. It's one thing buying the technology, but how certain are you that technology set up properly, that it's doing the job, that people are monitoring it? Best in the world, cybersecurity is a really, really challenging thing. And if you've got an IT manager in house, that's great, but a good IT manager is not a cybersecurity threat analyst. Talking about the way that we can make it accessible for SME customers. They would never hope to go out and hire an analyst to run in house. It is much more sustainable to have that functionality bought in as a service, and then business owners get that peace of mind that somebody is looking after them. Like I said, evenings, weekends, bank holidays. I'm a small business owner myself, and dare I take a holiday, it's nice to be assured that somebody's looking after the estate for me, and that, I think that's really, really key. You know, having that assurance that somebody's got your back, and somebody who's an expert. And I think that's one thing. I think, you know, speaking on behalf of all the panelists, you know, we've obviously got expertise in different areas. Isn't it great that we can give that to customers and they don't have to worry about doing those things? You know, I don't think it's, the modern world is not about us creating stuff and giving it to a user and hoping they make the best out of it. Actually, let's help them, let's guide them through it, let's do it for them in some cases.
And I'm sure, Rob, that is a view that you would share entirely.
Yeah, entirely. So buying the technology is one thing, and on day one, technology is always at its greatest point. It's configured correctly, everything is as it should be. The issue is that as time progresses, technology tends to become more and more outdated. And it's about maintaining that level, making sure that it remains secure, it remains productive, it remains set up correctly from a sustainability point of view. So instead of just looking at the price of the hardware, for example, with print, and you're looking at your lease price, you're looking at your service prices, we're very heavily advising what are the added value services. So how can the service provider monitor that infrastructure for you? How can they make sure that firmwares are up to date? How can they be notified if there is a malicious activity in the organization? Somebody's accessing documents that they shouldn't be. Can we be notified of this? And then in terms of that reporting from a governance and a sustainability point of view, supply chain, you're going to be scrutinized, having that data available. So it's not just the technology, it's the services that the provider can give you to make sure everything remains as it should do.
Brilliant. And Simon, final thoughts from yourself.
I don't disagree with the two gentlemen. From our standpoint, the whole value of peace of mind is a mutual value. It's knowing that the end user has got what they wanted. They have had the best information given to them to make that decision. But also, you know, from a hardware perspective, certainly with our particular industry, it's taking a second user device and making good as close to new as physically possible. So you are getting a product that isn't a graded product. This is a standard that's set by the British Standards Institute. So ultimately, you're getting a product that is as close to new as possible. It does what it says on the tin, and you have complete peace of mind on the back of that.
Brilliant. And I'm going to leave the final word to our hosts, Brian and Espria.
Yeah, I'm obviously echoing what the guys have said. To be honest, it's just that having the right things in place and having the skills available to you. Also, where Espria comes in, we can obviously offer our own skills, and we can, you know, work with our partners who are all on the panel here and others. So it's just having that, you know, that access to people gives you that peace of mind that, you know, if you're the IT manager of a small business, there's a lot to take on. You know, it's trying to manage it all day by day, and having someone like Espria behind you to support you gives you that peace of mind that you are getting the best advice, and your systems hopefully are configured to best practice to take you forward.
Brilliant. Thank you, Brian. And as I would say to all the people who've attended this call today, if you've got specific questions you want to answer, please get in contact with Espria and our fellow speakers here, and I'm sure we will be able to put your mind at rest. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and have a great day.